The Pittsburgh Steelers look to bounce back in Week 2 on Monday Night Football versus the arch rival Cleveland Browns here at Acrisure Stadium. It's going to be a good game to watch. I'm going to be previewing it for you guys here in just a sec. But first, make sure that you help us beat the Browns off the field while the Steelers beat the Browns on the field by helping us win our sub battle this week with the Browns Report. They currently have 3 more new subs on the channel this week than we have, so help us beat the Browns Report today, and I'll make a deal with you guys. Subscribe for a week. Check us out for a week. Watch our live watch party on Monday, all these different things. If you don't like the content that we have on the channel, just unsubscribe and help us beat the Browns for this week, because there's no way we can let these clowns beat us in subs this week. All right, so now let's get into this Week 2 preview. Of course, the Browns will be traveling to Acrisure Stadium for Monday Night Football. 0-1 Steelers, 1-0 Browns. They beat the Cincinnati Bengals last week, held Joe Burrow and that offense to 3 points. I'm going to tell you why that's a little bit fraudulent in just a sec, but let's talk about the profile here for Kevin Stefanski's Cleveland Browns. 1-0, of course, they beat the Bengals last week. Their offensive scheme is a second-generation West Coast offense. Now, what does that mean? Right now, we're in the 3rd generation of the West Coast offense, so guys like Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, Matt LaFleur, they're revolutionizing the game right now. Mike McDaniel in Miami is another big one as well. Kevin Stefanski is still kind of in the older school version of the West Coast offense, kind of more of the Mike Shanahan school of the West Coast, where it's a lot of outside zone. It's not as much of the motion as you see now. You look at the offensive scheme, it's much more like Clint Kubiak or Kyle Shanahan than it is or a Mike Shanahan than a Kyle Shanahan or a Mike McDaniel. So keep that in mind for the Browns. And then the defensive scheme is an attacking 4-3 defense. Lots of man, lots of press. They have a new defensive coordinator this year, Schultz. He's a really, really aggressive defensive coordinator. Expect to see a lot of blitz. Expect to see a lot of man. And you look for Kenny Pickett to be under pressure a lot in this football game. Now let's take a look at the Browns' Week 1 matchup versus the Bengals, where they won 24-3. And, if you're just looking at this score and you didn't know that Joe Burrow got hurt during the preseason this year, you'd be like, oh my God, the Browns defense is getting ready to be the best unit in the freaking league this year. Just 14 of 31 passing for Joe Burrow, just 82 yards. So that certainly looks good on the Browns defense. But then, the thing that I'm looking for with this is that the reason why I think the Browns are a little bit on fraud watch with this win is that, holding a Bengals team to 3 points might seem impressive, but Joe Burrow was hurt. He was nowhere close to fully healthy in that game. He couldn't move the way that he wanted to. And with the pass rush that the Cleveland Browns have, they were getting to him all day long, and it was just really, really tough for the Bengals to get anything going. And, I think moving forward into the future here, when they face a quarterback like Kenny Pickett, for example, that can get outside the pocket and can actually move, I think it's going to be very, very advantageous for that offense that goes up against them. I think the Browns are in for a rude awakening in the weeks to come. Now, let me know what you guys think about the Cleveland Browns down there in the comment section. Is this Browns franchise on fraud watch after Week 1 by beating the Cincinnati Bengals? If you think they're frauds, type yes. Or if you think they're still a pretty darn good football team and they were worth that and they were actually that good, type no. This is going to be the pinned comment on today's show. So YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. Take advantage of that time by giving me a yes or by giving me a no in the comment section. Now let's talk about the Browns quarterback, Deshaun Watson. Of course, his second year with the Cleveland Browns, served an 11-game suspension last year. Did not look good in his time starting last year, including his game against the Steelers, where he threw a number of interceptions. Hopefully the Steelers defense can repeat that kind of performance. Against the Bengals last week, 16-29, not necessarily a great start for Deshaun Watson, and we haven't seen this quarterback play at like an MVP elite level since 2020. That's 3 years ago, guys. So I really don't think that he's going to all of a sudden flip the switch here and suddenly be amazing. I think this Steelers defense is going to get after him. I think the Browns are going to have to rely on their run game. Of course, highlighted by Nick Chubb, the second impact player on our list this week. Amari Cooper is a legit number 1 wide receiver. You have to account for him as well. They got a great pair of edge rushers in Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith. Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, a really, really good quarterback duo as well. And if that's not enough, they got another great duo at safety. Juan Thorndale and Grant Delpit. Delpit in particular had a really, really good Week 1 performance against the Bengals. And then they've got a really big-bodied red zone threat at tight end, and David Njoku. You got to make sure you account for him in the red area. Now, still to come, here on Steelers Talk. Keys to victory versus the Cleveland Browns here coming up here on Steelers Talk. But before I get into those keys to victory, let's have a word from our sponsor at Game Time. And Game Time is the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater in your area. So I love using Game Time for really last-minute tickets. Like if I'm at work and I want to go to like an MLB baseball game or an NBA basketball game, I just pull up my phone, go to my Game Time app, and I know they have the lowest price guarantee, so I don't have to go to any of these different sports ticketing apps because I know I'm going to get the lowest price. They also have some great features on their app, including a 360-degree view of the seat before you buy it, so there's no surprises when you get to the stadium. That's a really cool feature that they have. And let me tell you guys, it's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive at the stadium. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time today. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code SteelersChat. Okay, that's Steelers Chat, one word, all caps, for $20 off your first purchase today. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code SteelersChat, all caps, one word, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, now let's go over some strengths and weaknesses from for the Cleveland Browns heading into this week. Starting with the strengths, all right? I think the top 3 strengths for what they do well is that they have a great ground and pound run game. They run a lot of outside zone here. You're going to see a ton of it on Monday night. Be prepared for it. Nick Chubb is that number one guy. This run game averaged over 5 yards per carry. I think it was 5.5 yards per carry versus the Cincinnati Bengals in week 1. The Steelers absolutely need to make sure they can contain that. Of course, Amari Cooper is a legit number 1 wide receiver, at least in my opinion. Patrick Peterson, Levi Wallace, whoever's on him has to do a good job if you want to limit what Deshaun Watson can do with his arm. And then also they got great defensive talent throughout their defensive roster. Myles Garrett is one of the best edge rushers in football. Not as good as TJ Watt, I might say, but you know what? Pretty darn good. And then you've also got guys like Ward and Newsome and all these young, talented players that they got on that defensive unit. It's going to be a tough test for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but there are some weaknesses here with the Cleveland Browns, starting with their quarterback situation, which is definitely shaky at this point. We have yet to see that 2020 version of Deshaun Watson show up for the Cleveland Browns. I don't think it's going to show up versus this really talented Steelers defense. I think that's an area that the Steelers can get after it this weekend. And then also, they're the effing Browns, man. These guys are going to brown. The Browns are going to brown, man. Death, taxes, and the Browns being the freaking Browns. Those are the 3 things in life you can count on. So, when the chips are down, the Browns are going to lose the game, especially when they're on the road and in Steeler territory. Now, coming up next, some keys to victory versus the Cleveland Browns. All right, you guys have been waiting for them. I've got them for you. But before we get into that, make sure you like this video if you think Pittsburgh wins this week versus the Cleveland Browns. It's a big week. Got to be a bounce-back week for Mike Tomlin, Kenny Pickett, and Matt Canada. If you think it's going to happen this week, make sure you click that thumbs up icon. All right, so let's start with the first key to victory this week, which is to hold your ground on the ground. All right, so the bread and butter for this Cleveland Browns offense is going to be that outside zone running game. You know it's coming. You got to prepare for it. And then these new linebackers like Cole Holcomb, Landon Roberts, Quan Alexander, you have to be ready to fill your run fit. There's just too many times in week 1 where those run fits were not filled, and it led to wide open gaps for Christian McCaffrey to take advantage of. You have to stay disciplined if you want to beat this Cleveland Browns team, especially with how good their offensive line is and how good their running backs are. So I'm looking at that being a major priority for the Steelers defense. And then when it comes to the passing game, you just got to make Deshaun Watson beat you, okay? If Deshaun Watson starts slinging it around the park in the first half, okay, maybe we can make some adjustments. But until then, you're loading up the frickin' box. You're telling them, we dare you to throw the football, Deshaun Watson. We want you throwing the football. We're not going to let Nick Chubb beat us. We're going to make Deshaun Watson beat us through the air, and then we can make adjustments from there if needed. And then for the offensive side of the ball, starting with the run game, the Steelers need to run the football. Last week versus the 49ers, immediately behind the 8 ball, right, down multiple possessions very early in the game. Kenny Pickett had to throw the ball like a million times. in week 1. That can't happen again because I'm not sure Kenny Pickett is talented enough to carry a team back when you're down by multiple possessions and the defense knows that the offense is throwing the football. You need to have a more balanced offensive attack here, and that's exactly what the Steelers wanted to get done with Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. You've got the talent to get it done. The offensive line should be talented enough to get the job done up front. It's just going to be a matter of executing and getting this balanced play style going here in 2023. Then when it comes to Kenny Pickett, I think the big thing for him is keep things simple and get the ball out of his hands quickly. If you're throwing deep down the field, give him a 5-step drop and tell him to throw it deep or throw it short, right? Don't make it too complicated. Don't have all these deep crossers and all these different things that are going to take forever to develop down the field. With Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith and all the blitzes that the Browns are going to be throwing at him this weekend, you don't want him sitting in the pocket for 5, 6, 7 seconds. You want him to be in there for about 3 or 4 seconds, take his drop, get rid of the football, and make a clean, easy read. And if you do that, I think the Steelers could be very successful in the passing game here, especially if that run game is humming. And then finally, this is an AFC North divisional matchup, man. It's going to be physical. It's going to be tight. It's going to be really close there at the end. And when that time comes, you have to go make a big play, right? The team that gets the big play in this game is probably going to end up winning, whether that's a muffed punt, whether that's an interception, whether that's a game-winning drive. It's going to be something in this game. Somebody's going to make that big play when it's close. Kenny Pickett and the Steelers team did a really good job at making the big play in these divisional games towards the end of the season last year. That's why they beat the Browns at Acrisure Stadium to finish out their 2023 campaign. If they do it this week, they're going to come away victorious, which is why I have the Steelers winning this game. Low-scoring affair, 17-16. Steelers win. I think it's going to be close to a walk-off situation, whether it's a Chris Boswell last-second field goal or whether it's a touchdown drive to finish things out. I think it's going to be really close towards the end. I think Matt Canada and this offense are going to struggle a bit against this really stout Cleveland Browns defense. But then I also think the Steelers are going to do a much better job defensively this week, and they're going to stymie the Browns offense quite a bit. I think the Browns only get 1 touchdown. I think they'll get a couple of field goals, and it'll be enough for Kenny Pickett to come in and make that big play in the fourth quarter. I've got the Steelers winning 17-16 on Monday Night Football. But thank you guys so much for joining us today. We're going to be doing our live watch party on Monday night, so make sure you join us for that. Make sure you click that subscribe button. We're going live at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for our coverage of Monday Night Football. It's an incredibly important game. We're doing a super chat battle with the Cleveland Browns, so if you want to help us beat them this week on and off the field, make sure you click that subscribe button, turn on your notifications, and make sure you join us Monday night.